I really like George Lowe, and I'm really gonna miss him. And um, I wanted to share my memories, my thoughts about George Lowe. I grew up loving Space Ghost. Space Ghost was one of my favorite superheroes. I was such a huge fan of Space Ghost design. I thought he was so cool. And I was really interested in the original Space Ghost that was a serious hero, but I was so fascinated by Space Ghost that I watched a lot of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and I ended up loving Space Ghost Coast to Coast. And I think that George Lowe was definitely the right choice to do Space Ghost voice. And I think that Gary Owens' Space Ghost and George Lowe's Space Ghost are both really good. Um, and I think that Gary Owens' Space Ghost feels definitive, and so does George Lowe. And I think it's a lot of fun to watch Space Ghost. I think George Lowe's voice was a lot of fun to listen to, and I had a lot of really good times listening to George Lowe's voice. And I think that George Lowe did a lot of really good work for Space Ghost in Space Ghost Coast to Coast, also Cartoon Planet, um, and also some guest work in The Brack Show. And speaking of The Brack Show, another big voice role of George Lowe's is Brack's father. And I think that Brack's dad from The Brack Show is the funniest character in The Brack Show, and a lot of the most enjoyable, memorable episodes of The Brack Show are episodes centered around Brack's dad. And I think that George Lowe should be remembered for both Space Ghost and Brack's dad. And that's not all that I know George Lowe from. I watched a lot of Aqua Teen Hunger Force, and George Lowe did some guest voice work for it. So I've heard George Lowe's voice a lot, thanks to a lot of the Space Ghost stuff. And I think that George Lowe was a wonderful, talented voice actor. And I'm really gonna miss him. You can let me know what you think of George Lowe's career. You can let me know if you have a favorite role of his. And you can let me know if you want it, if you have a fondest memory of hearing his voice.